they're new to this channel, hi, my name is Jessie, and I love talking about all things that impact the event industry. So this conversation is intended to help those of you that are needing a little bit more clarity. The great thing for you to know is that I will be doing these live streams every other week on Tuesday during the middle of the day. I had a little bit of tech support earlier, or tech issues earlier, that I was able to resolve, obviously, because we're doing our conversation today and now. So, all right, let's just be honest. Most businesses don't have systems. And most creatives rather focus on the pretty side of running a business and not the tech part of it. And at the end of the day, it just ends up being pretty chaotic for those of you that have really great skills, but may not have the most organization. You're finding yourself managing clients, vendors, invoices, emails, and you're really just keeping it all together and doing your best from day to day. And you're wanting to do more of the execution, but you may be a little bit stuck as to how to put it all together into a clear process. And without clear workflows or processes, you will be in a position of continually putting out fires that could potentially get in the way of you scaling your business. So every 2 weeks, what I'll be doing is doing a live Q&A session where you'll be able to drop questions and I will answer them. So if you're actually watching this as a recording and you have a question about workflows or something that you've been really curious about that you need more insight, I will address it on the next session, or I will try to answer the questions throughout the week. But ultimately, it will be on the next session that I'll be doing. So, the biggest thing about workflows is that I know that sometimes it can feel as if it is a big word, or it might seem like a fancy term. That's the best way to say it. Um, but today, I am hoping to help with fixing the concept for how you see this, and hopefully to give you some more clarity or give you some things to think about to help with bringing more insight into how this applies into your business. One of the biggest things I always hear from people that are in the industry is, um, I bought this platform, or I'm using this CRM and I'm not able to figure out how it's working, or I don't feel like there's enough resources and information. Um, I am going to beg a differ. It's not because there's not enough videos out there. It's just because everyone does things differently inside of their business. And platforms cannot provide videos for every potential possibility. I know we want to hear that, but you know what? That is not always going to be the case. So, with some of the advice I'm going to give you now and today, I know some of you will actually be watching and saying to yourself, I do this differently. I get that. That's why I'm asking for you to drop some comments. And what I will be doing for you to have some big vision about what's happening is that going into 2026, I will have a sign up form so that those of you that are open to doing a live conversation, you will be doing this live interview and we're going to be discussing your business. So it does require some transparency, and honesty, because I get everyone does not want to talk about their specific business. So when I talk about workflows, ultimately it is going to come down to how you're doing your business and the structure in which you're using. Hold on, let me just make sure I have the right one. Oh, nope, that's not what I want. Sorry, y'all. I'm just wanting to have the right screens up so I can keep an eye on out on everything. Okay. So when I talk about workflow, it's always going to be my four-prong approach. I say this on the regular videos, but I'm going to say it today now on this live stream. When I think of your four-prong workflow is always going to come down to your inquiry process, your onboarding, your execution, and your offboarding. As someone that is an event planner herself, I know a good amount of y'all are only focusing on getting inquiries and getting paid. And that's it. And it's not a good feeling, as someone that's hiring people, because there's not any additional communication. There's not anything to ensure that things are going smoothly. So when we talk about those 4 stages, every business is going to have something different that's happening into those 4 stages. And here's the thing, if you've never thought of your business in this way, I understand that it can feel overwhelming. So the first thing that I'm going to recommend for you to do is take out some pen and paper. One of the things I was trying to figure out how to do, and I am going to figure this out, is that I was going to share my iPad and write out some stuff, but I couldn't figure out how to make that work with doing this today. So I will be working on it. So the biggest thing I always recommend for anyone when it comes to you thinking about your workflows, take out a pen and paper and just brain dump. Dump out all the things that you're doing in your business. And the best advice I can give you to this is not to only think about big things. Like what happens when people are thinking about their workflows, their processes, how they're executing and providing their services, is that they're only thinking about these major actions that you're doing in your business. You're not thinking about the small things like follow ups or checking inventory or following up with vendors or sending out booking sheets. I mean, again, it all depends on the type of business you have. I mean, I was working with someone on their system and they do event decor. So one of their steps would be naturally to check the inventory to make sure that you have the inventory in place. And if you don't, to go ahead and place that order or to reserve it. So the first thing you really want to do is just take out pen and paper, no judgment, no commitment, just brain dump. Then you can sit here and think to yourself, Jesse mentioned four major stages: the inquiry, the onboarding, the execution, and the offboarding. What I then recommend you to do is once you allow yourself the space to just unequivocally like no judgment, freely let out all your steps, then you can put them in the different buckets that are going to help you with creating consistency. The biggest thing about creating workflows and putting those workflows into a platform is that it will save you time, it will reduce the headache, it will impress your clients, and then it will allow for you to focus on what you really want to focus on, which is the creative side of your business. But if you're having to reinvent the wheel each and every time, it's going to feel impossible to scale because often a lot of people will want to have more clients. I tell some clients that I've worked with before and I've done audits with, I'm like, if your business was to have a 10% increase in clientele, could you actually handle that increase? And most people can't because they don't have anything structurally that allows for that to happen. Because what happens in the event industry, because I've been on the side of when people overcommit and they don't have structure, things fall through the cracks. And I've had it where some not event planners, but caterers and vendors I've worked with, they're like, Jesse, give me as much work as I can take. I can do 3 events at the same time. And never, it doesn't, they can't. And I mean that with love. They want to be able to do the 3 events in one way, but the thing about it is that they don't have any structure to be able to execute it effectively and efficiently without events starting late, without potentially giving refunds and credits, because whenever I've had people do that, it always ends up in me losing money because people are not able to fulfill that type of capacity. So you always want to make sure that when you're doing events and you're thinking about your workflows, you want it to be that it's not only handling what your client requests are now, it's actually allowing for you to grow into your business and desires because we don't want things to fall apart. So the main purpose of it all is to have a real strong business building trust with your clients and they know what to expect. So you don't want it to be that people have to give friends, they refer you, which is great, but they're giving those caveats of this person's really great, but you got to follow up with them. or like something that's going to require micromanaging because they just feel as if you're not organized, and you don't want it to be that the only thing that's pulling through is your execution because everything else is chaotic. So here's the thing that I want you to really expect from today's conversation. And if this is the first time you're watching any of my content, and if this is the first time you really are aware of like my experience, I have over 15 years of experience in the event industry. I have a corporate event planning company that services multiple cities and states, and we're growing and expanding. And over this 2025, we are going to be evolving some because of how our specific niche is changing. So I'm not just giving you random advice because I just like to talk about events. I'm giving you advice that's helped not only myself, but also my team members and my vendors that work with me to scale their businesses. And my company, in over the 15 years, we've made multiple seven figures. I don't like to talk about money like that because I don't feel like that's really helpful for people, because revenue and profit are two different conversations. And if you're in the event industry, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So ultimately, when I'm doing these live Q&As, I'm going to be giving you some tips, but the most impactful is if you have questions. I want for you to comment and let me know what you are having questions about so I know what to talk about next week or for me to answer throughout the upcoming time period. Okay, so here's what we're going to be covering is just some common mistakes that people are making when it comes to their workflows. And I want to be able to give you some recommendations when it comes to effectively thinking through your workflows. So grab a notebook, take out some pen and paper, make sure you are ready to stay plugged into this. It won't be a long conversation, but again, as I continue with this, it will likely get longer because I know there's not a lot of conversations around all of this. So before we dive into this, I want for you to take a moment to just drop in the chat or in this live just to let me know what is one system or workflow you wish was easier inside of your business. So is it client onboarding, follow-ups, proposals, or something else? I want to be able to understand exactly where you are and where are people that are watching our videos and content, where you are inside of your business. So the biggest issue that I remember I had in the beginning part of my business came down to follow up. One of the things I always recommend to people when it comes to creating a workflow, we all have what some people consider mistakes, challenges, failures. However, I like to consider it learning lessons. Anytime you've had a learning lesson, that actually helps you. Once you get over the fact that a mistake has occurred, it allows for you to actually start to think in your side of your business. How do I help with ensuring that this doesn't occur again? So this is why I always say the first step, write out all the things you're already doing. Then what you do is think about what were some of the most recent learning lessons that you had, and what can you do to actually improve what you've been doing. So I'll give an example. For me, I remember um, years ago, I had that when clients were signing contracts, they signed them, awesome. You're like, yes, client signs, new booking, excitement. But in the corporate vein, a lot of times what they're doing is just signing things off just to get it off their list. So what would happen is that they would sign contracts and someone would miscommunicate about the date, the time, what they booked, what they did not book, something of the matter. And I had that happen a few times. I was like, okay, what can I do to protect myself and make sure that if there are misunderstandings, that it helps with reducing this happening in the future? So what I had happen inside of my business was that after a client paid or like after a client signed on their contract, because in the corporate vein, majority of my clients do not use P cards. They always are invoicing and I get the money before the event. So what I had to have happen was that after their contract was signed, they do have a booking confirmation that just says, congratulations, your event is confirmed, and we have you scheduled for this date and time. So that's the first touch point. You're getting a confirmation and it's telling you the date and the time. But again, sometimes people do not read and they don't see it. So I had to put a second barrier in the flow. So the second barrier is that I believe 2 days after an event, 2 days after someone books, I have a booking detail sheet. There's a template that I use inside of my system. Before using HoneyBook, I was using 17 hats. So I will say on the record, I do not have a leaning towards any specific platform, but what I do have a leaning towards is you having a platform, because there's absolutely no reason why any business in 2025, unless you just started a month ago, that you do not have a CRM. Something that's going to allow for you to have things clear and clean inside of your business and centralized, because this is so important. Because even for myself as a event coordinator or planner, depending on what we're doing, I have had it where people don't have a way for me to pay them outside of Cash App, or they don't have contracts or whatever. And when I have those situations, because I've been doing this for too long, it's a red flag. And I immediately don't think that that person's qualified to work with me. I know that might be wrong, but I've had too many issues or learning lessons where people that did not have things organized, that it was a absolute dumpster fire, either in communication, arrival, timeliness, professionalism, whatever. And that's my right as a business owner, because ultimately people are trusting that anyone that I bring into their business to help with executing events, that I know how to properly select vendors and partners to execute those. So I'm a little bit more stringent because I know that my clients appreciate my ability to have discernment on who I select. So what I have happen is that 2 days after a client books, I have a booking detail, which is a template that I have already set up in HoneyBook, that it has the date, time, address, which is pulling in immediately from the information inside of HoneyBook or whichever CRM. But then I have a reiteration of what they booked. The reason why I do this is because in the past, I would have issues where, again, they're just marking things off or they're assuming things. Like I know anyone in events, especially for anyone that does food, beverages, or entertainment, clients assume a lot. And they would book a caterer and they assume that we're decorating the whole room. Like what? That wasn't a part of the contract. But this is why you need to make sure that you have things in writing that helps to at least protect yourself, so that if there's ever a misunderstanding, you can always have a paper trail that says, hey, X, Y, and Z occurred. These are the things we discussed. This is what I actually covered. So whenever you have challenges, don't just get in the space of offense or blaming clients or all that kind of stuff. Because if you have a solid process and system and you think through, how do I protect my business and my brand reputation, because that's what you're thinking through. How do I protect my client, my brand's reputation? You're going to implement the right things inside of your workflow for your customers. The second thing that I find is a mistake is that because people want to have high personalized services. I love a personalized service, but what I don't love is reinventing the wheel each and every time. The biggest mistake people make around this is that they think personalization is reinventing their workflow each and every time. Instead of thinking, okay, someone might come to me because they're going to be needing to do a corporate event, but this one's going to be inside compared to this one's going to be outside, or we're going to have 50 people compared to 100 people. Like if we're having to rethink what communication goes to our client experience, then what's going to happen is that it's going to be hard to scale. I know anyone that's watching this that has been in the position where you're you might have someone that's working with you or trying to support you, and it's hard for them to follow what's going to happen next. And then what happens is then people like, I try to hire someone, but I had to still do it all myself. And I'm like, well, the reason why is because there was nothing for them to follow. And what happens is that you make yourself the cog in the flow. And you kind of, like they say, is like a funnel. So you put yourself as like this tight point inside of, and I'm forgetting, oh gosh, what is the term? I'm blanking on the term, but essentially, like, think of a funnel, and here you are. You have people that want information, you have people that are going to work with you, but because you're making yourself that access point, individuals can't do anything outside of you because you haven't made it easy for people to support you. And if you're doing it yourself, then it means it's even more stressful for you to execute the things that you need to execute. So, what you want to always do is, even if you're doing personalized experiences, love that. I love a high touch premium service. So, please don't take it as I'm saying I don't like a high touch service. What I am telling you, though, is that you have to think through from a workflow process what are going to be some things that are standardized, or at least building out templates and things of that nature that are going to allow for communication to happen a little bit more frequently, um, and allow for you to still edit before it goes out. So I think that that is one of the biggest things, because I've had a good amount of people recently that have come to me that do very high touch. And what happens is that I haven't spoken to anyone that does high touch that doesn't sound overwhelmed. And they usually are overwhelmed because there's no structure in their system. And you don't want it to be that you feel anxious all the time. I remember feeling tightness in my chest years ago because I just was not organized the way that I needed it to be organized. You want to make sure that you're streamlining how you're executing your services, even if you're doing personalization through your process. So that is the second mistake that people are making when it comes to their workflows. The third mistake that people make is not considering follow-ups. Follow-ups are going to, they say it's magic in the follow-up. I don't know if you ever heard this term before. There's magic in the follow-up. And it's true because it takes a multitude of follow-ups at this day and age, because think about how much stuff is fighting for your attention. Like right now, I've had people log in and log off. Chances are because there's other things that seems more interesting for them to watch right now, or there's other things fighting for your attention. And what I find is that if when we're creating workflows and we're not taking in consideration that our clients have busy lives, and we think like, oh, this person reached out and I sent them this proposal, I find that people rather stay in the space of someone's not serious, or staying in the space of offense, when really, no, the client opened the email, their kids started throwing up, and things are chaotic at their house. They thought they selected a date and time, but they haven't. You sent them a proposal, they're excited, they forgot. They thought they did sign. Heck, they might even thought they clicked on it. and and because they're just going through the flow because you haven't thought through the follow-ups, what happens is then you're having people reach out to you last minute saying, "Hey, I thought I had this booked." And then what happens is, and I've spoken to people and they'd be like, "Why would someone think that they're still booked? Why would they not know?" Like, you're assuming that they intentionally forgot. Like, they intentionally thought to not click send or intentionally not pay. Yes, there are some people that do intentionally do that, but there's also a good amount of people that do not do it intentionally. So this is why when you go to pen and paper, if you know that maybe, let's say you're watching this and you're a wedding planner and you send an onboarding questionnaire, you want to still have a follow-up that several days after you send them this onboarding questionnaire or this design questionnaire, or for those of you that do event design and you have to send the client a mock-up, why not build a workflow that says if this client hasn't done X, Y, and Z in 5 days, that I need to follow up with them so that they are reminded, and you're doing gentle reminders that we haven't received their payment, or we haven't received their colors, or we haven't had them give us whatever it is that you need to give them. Or if they your inquiry form and you needed to get some feedback on menus, again, never sit in the space of thinking someone's not taking your event industry business serious. In reality, everyone has a ton of things going on. I have a ton of things going on. It's 7 o'clock and I have probably a good 4 or 5 hours worth of work still to do. And I put my phone on to do not disturb. If someone's going to be offended because they thought I am not taking them serious because I didn't reply, that is not the case. It's just that I have a full workload and your clients have a full workload. So that's why not having follow-ups in a workflow is really killing people, because now what's happening is that because you didn't build follow-ups inside of your workflow, people are reaching out to you 5, 7 days before an event and they're like, "Hey, is everything good to go?" And then you're like, what? I didn't know," like, or whatever the case is. Because I get calls from people all the time about that, and I'm like, "Did you do this? Did you follow up with them?" So not having follow-ups is another big issue that people face. And then the final one that I wanna talk about is going to be something, again, I'm sharing this not only from, uh coaching people and what I do in my business, I'm sharing from the space of someone that actively books vendors. And a lot of my content on Green-Eyed Ambition, I get it's not because of all my only like it's not only because of my own experience, like my business experience. It's because of when I'm looking for vendors and I'm sourcing, it's chaotic. So and I know a lot of people in the event industry are like, there's so much competition out there. No, it's not. A lot of people are out here running businesses that are not organized. So if you are able to if you want to elevate yourself, be organized. Get you some systems, get you a workflow, make sure you're able to communicate effectively and efficiently, whatever that is. But there's not a lot of competition that's out there. The final issue that I find that happens when it comes to workflows and systems is to have it that you are able to train people for the next part of this of your growth, because that is what gets in the way for people to scale. And to be fair, you may be watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to grow my business to a certain level. I guess some people are just doing in the event industry because they're just trying to make a few extra bucks. Like, in fact, I found someone on TikTok, his whole purpose for doing his business was because they're trying to pay off debt and grow their retirement goals. Everyone's not trying to grow seven-figure businesses or international companies. So whatever it is that you want, I want for you to get what you need out of it. But it's super important to think, even if I'm trying to do this part-time, how does my business still work and operate without me? Or having it that a virtual assistant is able to support you. This is why you want to have workflows. You want to have processes. We often call that your standardized operating procedures. Like, even something as simple as having a family member that's helping you with preparing your um totes before events. Like caterers, a lot of times they'll have like totes and design things and their kits and things like that, or bar services, you have kits and things of that nature, or food carts. Usually there's some kind of preparation. If you have people that are supporting you and you're like, "Hey, I have this event that's going on. Can you pack this kit?" If we're not making it easy for people to know what to do, either physically or if you have someone that's supporting you virtually and they're helping to do follow-ups on your bookings or proposals, if there's not any structure to it, it's not going to happen. So you want to always think through, if I am creating this workflow, Jesse mentioned that I have 4 stages: my inquiry, my onboarding, my execution, and my offboarding. If any of those do not make sense, drop a comment and I'll make sure to go into big more detail the next session. But you want to really think through what's happening in each one of those stages. And the biggest part too, the automation or the workflow, is that offboarding process. And I find that that is an area that people really fall short in the event industry. I remember for almost like 6, 7 years straight, I would have clients that reached out to me because they needed someone to do decorations for holiday season, with putting up the tree and decorating the lobbies and all that kind of stuff for the buildings I work with. And every year I was booking someone different because no one that I would hire followed up with me just to check in. Like, you specifically do event decor for the holiday season. You would think that you would pull a list of people you did event decor for the year before and reach out to them to find out if they need to book you again. No one follows up. And this is what's part of the offboarding. If we're just, hey, great event, bye, what that is that your sales process has this gigantic hole in it. You should be nurturing your clients, I say at minimum 90 days after a booking. The frequency and what is said during those 90 days is going to differ from business to business, but you do want it to be that it's not, hey, thank you, leave me a review. Like, it shouldn't just be that. There should be some intentionality when it comes to the offboarding of a client so that you're re-engaging people. I would say that I didn't look up the statistic, but I would easily say that 75 to 80% of my clientele are repeat clients or referrals from repeat clients. Like, I have clients that have worked with me like 13 years. They've gone from different companies and still are working. Like, I have a client that I've worked with, and she's had 3 babies throughout the time we've worked together. Um, and that's because I am really big on nurturing my client relationships through my offboarding process. And if you aren't sure about what an offboarding process is, you're more than welcome to comment, and I will give some ideas on what that looks like. And I would also say, if you want to know more about offboarding, what will make it help easier for me too is if you say exactly what service you do. You don't have to tell me the name of your company, but what service you do, because again, every business has different things, and I want to be able to give the best advice that I can potentially give. But the only way that you can really create this workflows and have the structure you're needing inside of your business is really just getting clear, like thinking through, brain dumping. Like, you don't have to know how to put it into whatever CRM or platform you're using. Because I didn't even talk about how to put it into a system. I just need you to have clarity on that you have steps that you're doing that you may or may not be aware of. Because whenever I have people that will say, well, Jesse, I've been using this platform and it's not working, I always will say, you can never put confusion into any computer system. You can never put confusion into any computer system. And so the clearer you are about your workflow and your steps, the easier it is for you to do your business. So I look forward to hearing your feedback and how you're excited about this live stream. I will be doing this every 2 weeks. So the next one will be happening a few days before Thanksgiving. I will have this recording live, like available on YouTube for you to watch this recording. So if you are making it to this specific point, comment, drop a question. I'll make sure on the next live I address it. And if anything that I said did not make sense, I would love to hear from you. And I just want to give you some quick wins that you can start implementing right away inside of your business. All right, the first one I want to recommend for you is to write down your top 5 reoccurring tasks inside of your business. We talked about brain dumping. just let it out, get clarity. So write down your top 5 reoccurring tasks for your business. The next thing is that I recommend for you to create one checklist or template that you can standardize inside of your business. So it can be a checklist that you send to clients, or it could be like I gave the example of your packing list for you to prep to go to events. So if you're a caterer or you're a DJ, like have you a supply list, like what is this checklist so that you can, it can be a virtual one or like a digital one, or it could be a physical one, whatever it's going to be. Let's think to ourselves, how do we make sure that we are always having what we need for what we're going to do? Because there's going to be a day, I know you're going to have some team members and staff members, and you don't want them out here guessing or paying for their mistakes. And then the final thing that I want to recommend for you to do is to, for those of you that have a CRM, is to look at how you can implement at least one automation or phase inside of the CRM that you're using, and it can be something as simple as when people are inquiring about your services with the appropriate follow-ups and things of that nature. Or it can be a welcome email that once people book you, that you're welcoming them to the amazing services in which you offer. So I am super excited again for this series. And if you want for me to review your workflow live next week, well, the next 2 weeks, make sure you send me a note. You can DM me on Instagram or on TikTok, or you can comment in this video. And if you want for me to actually go over your specific business and do an audit, I do have a paid service where we can audit your business to be able to figure out what's going on and how to improve it. So I hope today's talk and discussion has given you clarity. So don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, share this with another person you know in the event industry that feels as if they're drowning in their administrative work. So remember, business doesn't need to be more complicated. It just needs better systems. So thank you for spending your time with me today. And until next time, have a good one.